ASMR. I've got another eating video today. It seems like those have been the more popular videos so far, so I'm gonna keep those going. I've got an apple that I cut up here. Yeah, I like to cut them in slices just to make them easier to eat. And then one of my favorite go-to snacks, I've got a peanut butter and honey toast. I thought while we were eating today, on top of just obviously whispering a little bit, we could do some page turning sounds, and I could do a couple of these Murdles. Let me show you guys this. That'll make some nice sounds for a tapping video. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but Murdle, it's this cool kind of, I guess you could call it like a logic solving book where you get a couple clues and you have to kind of figure out, it's like a whodunit. You kind of figure out, okay, what was the murderer, where were they, and what was the weapon. So I can show you an example. So it gives you a little readout of different suspects, and it gives you a description of the suspects. And then it also gives you some of the locations and some descriptions of locations. And then on the bottom here, you also get a couple of the types of weapons. And then you get some statements about, okay, we know so-and-so was at a certain place. And then you kind of fill out this graph here to basically deduce who was the murderer with what weapon and where. And I can kind of show you a little bit of an example of that. But I just thought it'd be fun to maybe do this, and you could maybe just hear some of the book sounds too as I work through this. I'll probably do another video at some point with this, but I'll do the other angle where I'm, so you can see it. I'll show you like the first person view. But they're kind of just fun to, they're like brain teasers, keep your brain sharp, if you will. So I'll probably work on this a little bit. It'll be some good noises. I may not talk all that much. Maybe I'll walk through. Yeah, maybe I'll read these, and then I'll work through this Murdle with you. But it's kind of fun there. This is, it's not new. They've been out for a while now. They have all sorts of different editions of these too, but it kind of starts, I'm on number 34, but I think this one at least has 100. But I think different versions have different numbers, but they go from easy to hard. So the first couple, I think like the first 20 or first 25 are really easy. Then it gets a little bit harder. Then they have like an even harder version. And when you get towards the end with like 85 to 100, they're supposed to be super difficult. I haven't gotten there yet, but I think they're very popular. It's not new, but it's new to me, if you will. I just started doing these, I don't know, a month or so ago. So it's been fun. Let me bite into this. Also, my fiance bought this cute little Pokemon bookmark for me. You'll come to learn that I'm a big Pokemon fan. I have been since the OG games back in the day. It'll always be a little bit of a hobby of mine. I'm sure at some point we'll do a pack opening video on this channel. Maybe look through some of the binders that I have. Maybe play some of the games too. Okay. Number 34. The body in the graveyard. Inspector Iratino. That's the person you play as, the detective trying to figure everything out. Inspector Iratino wanted to go to a graveyard, so he used astrology to determine which graveyard they should visit. A method deductive logico detested. Okay, sorry, I misspoke. Deductive logico is who you are solving. Inspector Iratino is a different gentleman who's like the head of the investigation firm, if you will. Those details are not important, don't worry about that. C. Okay. So now we have the 3 suspects. One of the suspects is Sir Rolian, a sophisticated gentleman who was just recently knighted, if you believe the shoddy paperwork he carries with him. He's 5'8", right-handed, he has blue eyes, red hair, and he's a Leo. There's also Viscount Eminence, the oldest man you have ever seen. It is said that he was old when the old were young. This book also has a ton of like nerdy puns or dad jokes, if you will. The Viscount is 5'2", left-handed, has black eyes, black hair, and he's a Pisces. The last suspect is Brother Brownstone. He's a monk who has dedicated his life to the church, specifically to making money for it. Ha 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 ha. Brother Brownstone's 5'4", left-handed, dark brown eyes, dark brown hair, and he's a Capricorn. Okay, those are the suspects. Now the locations. We have the columbarium. It's indoors. It's a vault or wall where ashes are stored. Now you've learned a new word. The huge mausoleum, indoors. The rich members of the Midnight family are all buried in this pyramid-shaped tomb. And then the last location is the gift shop, indoors. You can buy little knick-knack gravestones or a plushie of their mascot, Mr. Skull. Let me just give you some page-turning sounds for a little bit, too. One of the best all-time triggers. Just the sounds of paper and books and pages turning. I love it. Okay, on to the weapons. There's a skeleton arm, which is medium weight. Caused the death of a person with the bones of a person who's dead. There's a vial of deadly poison, lightweight. Don't worry, it's safely contained by, hey, wait, where's the cork? Another funny pun, well, TBD if it's actually funny, you can determine that. And then a string of prayer beads, medium weight, ivory prayer beads covered with tiny engraved symbols. Okay, so that's all of our suspects, locations, and weapons. I'm gonna take another bite real quick, and then we'll get to the next portion of how this works. I think apple sounds are great for triggers. The crisp is so good. So, the way this works is now we have clues and evidence that we work through, and we start filling out our little graph here. So the first clue says Deductive Logico's forensics team discovered a drop of poison in a giant pyramid. So, the drop of poison, one of the weapons, was a vial of deadly poison, and it was found in a giant pyramid. So, we know one of the locations was the huge mausoleum, shaped like a giant pyramid. So this clue is basically telling us that poison was in the pyramid. So, we go down here, and if you'll see, there's the weapons row, and the suspects and locations, and then the suspects column with the weapons and locations. So we're trying to basically rule everything out to get our answer. So this first one, we know the drop of poison is in the giant pyramid, so we'll go to weapons, drop of poison. we're going to put a circle because we know the circle was where the poison was. And then because the poison is at the pyramid for the sake of this, weapons and people can only be at one place at one time. So because we know the poison was in the pyramid, it can't be at the other two locations. So we put an X for those locations. We also know that because the poison was in the pyramid, the other two weapons cannot be at the pyramid. So we put an X for those weapons. So now, after that first clue, it looks like this. We've X'd out what we know to be false or untrue, and we circle what we know to be true. The vial of poison was in the pyramid. I better get another bite. Such a good crisp. Okay. The next clue. Inspector Iritino found a finger bone in the columbarium. So we now know, well, a finger bone. We know one of the weapons was a skeleton arm. So now we know the skeleton arm was in the columbarium. So we do that same circles and X's process we do with the weapons and locations box. So because the skeleton arm was in the columbarium, we give it a circle. Because we already know the skeleton arm is in the columbarium, it can't be in the mausoleum, which we already knew from the previous clue. But now we also know that it can't be in the gift shop because it can only be in one place at one time. We also know that because the bone was in the columbarium, obviously the string of pearls can't be in the columbarium either, because only one weapon can be in one location. So because we've just ruled out, I'll go ahead and show what I did there. So we have the skeleton arm in the columbarium, which means the skeleton arm cannot be in the gift shop. Now we also know that the columbarium weapon already has been located. So we know that a different weapon cannot be in the columbarium, so we put an X there, which means the string of prayer beads, the last weapon, has to have gone in the gift shop. So we'll put a circle there. So we've now figured out where each weapon was in each location. Sorry, I try not to bang the silverware. I really do need to get maybe plastic utensils. The next part of this is where it gets tricky. So, the next part of this is called statements, where each of the suspects has given a statement. Now, we have to deduce one is lying. So we're just given the facts that of the 3 statements, 2 are going to be true. One of them is going to be a liar. The one who is lying is the murderer. So we have to figure out who the murderer is. Basically, what we'll do here is kind of take their statements and assume it's kind of like you got to try each scenario out and rule out which one makes sense logically. Now, if it gets too difficult, thankfully in the back there's a clue which tells you, okay, who's the person you should trust, or maybe who's the liar. And then, that's if you struggle and you can't figure it out yourself. There's also a reference point in the back where you can actually see the final answer. So the way I usually like to do it is I like to kind of just go one by one, and I usually just assume, okay, the first 2 people are telling the truth and the last person's a liar. And this is where it's important to have a pencil, or in my case, an erasable pen, because if it doesn't work out logically, you have to kind of like erase it and start over. So Cerulean says, I brought a string of prayer beads. So we're going to assume he's just telling the truth this time. We're going to assume the first 2 are telling the truth and the last one's lying, and see if it makes sense. So if Cerulean brought a string of prayer beads, we're going to go ahead and find Cerulean. And for the weapon, we're going to say he brought the string of prayer beads, which means the other 2 suspects, Cerulean. Oh, sorry, I did the wrong. I was marking the weapon for Viscount Eminence. I like to usually do these X's and O's a little smaller because those are the ones that I know I'm unsure of. I'm testing. So Cerulean says he brought the string of prayer beads, which means the other 2 suspects couldn't have possibly brought those, which also means Cerulean couldn't have brought the other 2 weapons. So that's what this portion looks like now. I did them smaller because we might erase it. So Cerulean brought the prayer beads, which means the other 2 couldn't have brought the prayer beads, and he couldn't have had the 2 other weapons. So that's how we got here. So now if we assume Viscount Eminence is telling the truth, Viscount Eminence says, yes, well, I brought a skeleton arm. So Viscount Eminence is saying he brought the skeleton arm. So I will put Viscount Eminence with a skeleton arm, which means he couldn't have had the vial of deadly poison, and we already know he didn't have the prayer beads because Cerulean said they had the prayer beads. And we now know Brother Brownstone couldn't have had the skeleton arm because obviously Viscount Eminence did. So that's what that looks like. Now, so we know Viscount Eminence, or we believe Viscount Eminence brought the skeleton arm, so he couldn't have had the other 2. And we know Brother Brownstone couldn't have had the skeleton arm because Viscount Eminence said he did, which means Brother Brownstone must have had the vial of poison. So I'm going to go ahead and get the circle there. So Brother Brownstone says, on the honor of my order, I was not in the gift shop. So if we're assuming he is lying, he was not in the gift shop, which means let me cross it off here. If he was not in the gift shop and he brought, so this is probably not true, because if he was not in the gift shop, that means, well, we know he was definitely, according to this, we know he was supposed to be in the mausoleum. So if we're assuming he's lying and saying, he would be saying, I was in the gift shop. If he was in the gift shop, he would have been placed in there based off of the previous clues we've done. So we know this is wrong because basically all three of these are coming up as true. So I believe he's probably telling the truth, but we have to figure out which of the other two are lying. Now, I also could be wrong on some of these, right? Like these are a little difficult, so I'm gonna try it again. I'm gonna erase what we just did, and this time I'll assume that Cerulean is the liar, and the last two are telling the truth. So let's erase what we just did. Okay, so if we're assuming Cerulean is the liar, let's say Viscount Eminence. Okay, I brought the skeleton arm, we knew that, so let's put the skeleton arm again for Viscount Eminence. And Brother Brownstone, on the honor of my order, I was not in the gift shop, so we'll say Brother Brownstone was not in the gift shop, which means Cerulean, I brought a string of prayer beads. So if we assume he's lying, Cerulean, we're gonna say he didn't bring a string of prayer beads, so we're gonna put an X instead of a circle because he's saying he brought them, but we think he's lying, so we're gonna say he didn't bring them. So I'm gonna put an X there, which now means he must have had the vial of deadly poison, which means Brother Brownstone didn't have the vial of deadly poison, and Brother Brownstone had the prayer beads. So Brother Brownstone, according to this, Brother Brownstone had the prayer beads and was in the gift shop. But Brother Brownstone said, on the honor of my order, I was not in the gift shop. Well, we assumed him to be true, so that can't be right. Because we have the prayer beads, which he apparently brought in the gift shop, but he's saying he was not in the gift shop. So that can't be right. For the purpose of this, and also because I'm not sure. I think Viscount Eminence might be the liar here. We haven't tested it yet, but I want to just we can test it. I can let this video stretch out a little bit. Okay, let's assume Cerulean is telling the truth again. Cerulean says, I brought a string of prayer beads. We assume Viscount Eminence lying, so Brother Brownstone, on the honor of my order, I was not in the gift shop. Okay. Viscount Eminence, I brought a skeleton arm. We think Viscount Eminence is lying and did not bring a skeleton arm. So if Viscount Eminence did not bring a skeleton arm, we're going to put an X there, which means Viscount Eminence had to have had the vial of poison, which means Brother Brownstone didn't. So Brother Brownstone must have had the skeleton arm, which, if we look at this, seems to make sense because now Brother Brownstone with the skeleton arm was in the columbarium. So we put a circle there and we X out the rest. Brother, Viscount Eminence had the deadly poison vial in the pyramid. So we put a circle there and we X out the rest. And then, it adds up. Cerulean has a prayer bead, or has the string of prayer beads in the gift shop, which makes sense. So we've just discovered this checks out. So Viscount Eminence was the liar and the murderer. So we fill it in here. We say Viscount Eminence was the murderer with the deadly poison in the mausoleum. And I know it might have been hard to Viscount Eminence with a vial of deadly poison in the mausoleum. So we were able to go through and deduce, basically by trial and error, assuming two people were telling the truth and one was lying, we were able to work out, who the actual killer was and the murderer. So these are just fun kind of brain teasers to keep the mind strong. I just like doing stuff like that just to make sure I'm kind of, staying active. Obviously, I work as well, but it's just good to kind of do things like that. I know I spent most of that video talking, so I'll get some mouth sounds in. Some eating sounds. I truly love peanut butter toast with honey. I think it's such an unbeatable snack. So good for you. So tasty. Guys, that's about it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Can't wait to see you again soon.